Ladies and gentlemen, kicking off the first stop on his world tour, our new president and prophet, Russell M. Nelson! You say you want some revelation, well, here you go. It's gonna blow your freaking mind.
Greetings, brothers and sisters. Welcome to the weekly Mormon News Roundup. I'm your humble host, D-Base, which is talent on loan from Kolob. I'm bringing you this podcast with half the Kinderhook Plates tied behind my back just to make things fair. My crew and I, we ruminate weekly on the great and spacious beehive, so thanks so much for joining us to discuss the latest current events in Mormondom. This is episode 89. We're going to talk about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and the prosperity gospel. Is there a connection? We're going to give you some more Tim Ballard updates. He's in a lot of trouble. David Archuleta, he spilled a lot of information about what happened when he stepped away from the church. You're not going to want to miss it. The LDS Church has purchased some land in Nebraska, and it's causing quite a bit of controversy. And finally, we're going to end on something in California where LDS women are alleging that they've been slapped in the face by a new change in church policy. Now, if you want to get in touch with me, I'm at www.mormonnewsroundup.org, or you can send me an email to kolob@mormonnewsroundup.org. I'd like to invite onto the program my fabulous co-host, Rob. Rob, how's it going?
Fine, thank you. Aloha. I'm live from Hawaii, and I'm just honored to be invited to be here. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. And Rob, what is your 1 minute story? Who are you? What are you all about?
Well, I'm a fifth-generation Latter-day Saint through the polygamous John Stuckey line. You've heard his story numerous times in General Conference. I was raised in Nebraska, served a mission in Mendoza, Argentina, graduated from BYU, joined the U.S. Air Force, and served in a cocoa stake in Florida. Moved to Bellingham, Washington, where I was a state executive secretary. Moved to Kauai, Hawaii. I know, rough. And I was a seminary teacher there and spent the last 18 years deconstructing. I guess I'm a slow learner. My therapist suggested that I find a way to find my own voice. So I opened up an anonymous TikTok channel called President Please Help Me. It's been a lot of fun, and I've met a lot of thoughtful people, including yourself. And it's been a great journey.
I wouldn't call you a slow learner, Rob. I would just call you a lazy learner, if you catch my drift. But that's why
guilty as charged.
Well, that's why I have the Polynesian Cultural Center behind me here. Is we're filming live on location, Rob.
Well, fancy budget you must have. That's great.
Yeah. Absolutely enormous budget. And your TikTok channel is absolutely incredible. It's just amazing. And I want to play something from that TikTok channel here for you. My personal favorite TikTok which you put out here, which is, can you show us what is it that we're going to see here? Can you let us know what we're going to see with this TikTok video?
You're about to see me place myself in the scenes of 3rd Nephi in the Book of Mormon during Jesus's visit. It's so exciting to me that I bring my camera so I can get a photo of the moment. And then during Jesus' speech, I'm going to have some questions for him because there's some anachronisms that I just don't understand.
And whosoever shall compel thee to go a mile, go with him twain.
Excuse me, what's a mile? We don't have those.
Ye shall know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes of thorns or figs of thistles?
Question, what are figs? Oh, this guy again.
I am Jesus Christ. I said I have other sheep, which are not of this fold. Ye are my sheep.
What's a sheep? We don't have those either. Not again. And Jesus, what did you say your last name was? Sorry, we don't speak Greek.
And whosoever shall say to his brother, Raka, shall be in danger of.
What's Raka? Can somebody get that guy out of here?
I wish I could have been there, because I've got lots of questions.
Rob, you wonder how all these videos here get tens of millions of views. It is because I have watched this video so many times. It is absolutely hilarious. And the best part of the video is at the end, I didn't even catch you got a banana in your hair here.
Yes, well, I was trying to convey the message that it's bananas, that Jesus is talking to people in America about figs and sheep and raka and miles, things that would have absolutely no meaning to them whatsoever. What you don't see in the video is my wife behind the camera laughing her head off as I've got a banana wound up in my hair.
Yeah, the rest of your videos are equally just as entertaining. So we'll link to you in the show notes for sure. And that does remind me that you have the Mormon News Roundup joke of the week, right?
I do, and I brought a prop for my joke. How many general authorities does it take to screw in a light bulb? Actually, none. They prefer gaslighting.
Oh, right. Gas. I guess I gotcha. Very nice. Okay. The first news article this week is a very interesting article here that was put out by Jana Reese on Religion News Service here, Mormonism and the Soft Prosperity Gospel. The LDS Church doesn't teach that God wants you to be rich, but it does promote a plan of happiness that emphasizes your very own personal flourishing. And kind of what's controversial about this particular article here is there's President Nelson's famous 2023 General Conference talk, Think Celestial. It's been updated, Rob, to include a disclaimer of sorts, and there's some fine print in the footnotes. What's going on here?
Well, that's the big question. Who's writing these footnotes? My guess, Curtin McConkie, right? I mean, after all, Jesus said, when you start on the covenant path, make sure to read all the fine print because terms and conditions apply.
Yeah, what we're seeing is that the talk has been updated to include a footnote that says that so President Nelson said in his talk in a talk in General Conference that he used to pay tithing, but it was only like 95% of what he was supposed to pay. And his first wife, D'Angelo, pointed out that he needs to pay the full amount. And therefore, he's tying in his blessings, his actual financial blessings from Heavenly Father are tied into his increased tithing. But when the talk was originally given, there was no disclaimer. And now the disclaimer says that just because you pay tithing to the church doesn't mean that God is going to make your bank account increase.
I find this very problematic that we've got these anonymous writers who are putting in these footnotes, who are writing gospel topic essays and undermining the original message of the prophet himself.
So here's the actual fine print that's been added to the Think Celestial talk. It says, this is not to imply a cause and effect relationship. Some who never pay tithing attain professional opportunities, while some who pay tithing do not. The promise is that the windows of heaven will be open to the tithe payer. The nature of the blessings will vary. So its terms and conditions apply to your payment of the tithing.
And the other thing that I find very hurtful is that it leads towards having a transactional relationship with your Heavenly Father rather than an actual loving relationship.
This also, in my opinion, like you said, could have been put in by Curtin McConkie because in Japan and in a couple of other countries, there has recently been this move by mostly secular countries to put in language into laws that say that religions cannot promise blessings in exchange for financial donations. In other words, you can't tell someone that if you don't pay our church or our organization or our whatever it is, then you will be going to hell. That's becoming less and less legal in many countries. So that's why when this talk is getting printed in a country, some of these places, they're saying, well, we're not linking donations with salvation. Terms and conditions apply. It looks like the lawyers took a look at the Think Celestial talk and gave it a 2023 update.
Yeah, is this a case of the Curtin McConkie tail wagging the church dog? Looks like it.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Rob, the LDS house always wins. A good fortune is if you're blessed, then that's definitely God. But if you're not blessed, then, well, God is just testing you.
Ouch. Yes. Yes.
Absolutely. And it's funny that we're talking so much about money because this is the season here, Rob, for the giving machines. You're familiar with those. The giving machines are beginning here. They're being rolled out in, I think, 81 cities, which is an all-time high. And, Travis and the famous Travis Kelsey, am I saying that right, Kelsey? Marie Osmond and others, they're spreading the good word about the church's giving machines. Everybody's getting in on these. And speaking of money here, let me play this for you and see what's going on with the giving machines this year.
Chiefs Kingdom, what's going on, everybody? You know how much I love to give back to this community, and this holiday season we have a fun way that we all can give back. Check out the Giving Machine. It's a big red box, you cannot miss it, and make sure you take the family down there and make a donation. Make someone else's Christmas or holidays that much better. And as always, go Chiefs, baby.
What are the giving machines and what are they all about?
Well, they're vending machines located in 61 cities where people can rather than buy a bag of chips or a Snickers bar, they can buy a goat for a family in Africa or diapers for a family who's struggling somewhere else. The church has been doing this successfully year after year after year.
Have these nonprofits that are associated with it too, right? And is 100% of what you donate going to what you think that it is? Is there any way to know about that?
Actually, if you read the fine print, the church requires these charities to, it says they can use up to 10% of the donations for administrative purposes, but the rest has to be used for charity. And the church requires these charities to submit a detailed report about how the funds were expended. Now, is the church going to provide a detailed report to the donors? Probably not.
No, they're definitely not. And that's the question. The church was just fined by the SEC last year, $5 million for irregular disclosures of its assets. So the big question here is, since the church does not disclose what it does with the giving machines, whereas most of the rest of these nonprofits and charities do, can the church be trusted to handle these donations ethically?
Their track record is not looking very good. And I'm all for charity. In no way am I discouraging charity. I see my family and relatives donating, and that's wonderful. I just wonder if there's a better way, like avoid the middleman and donate directly. Another improvement that I think could be made is I see the church's name plastered on these machines. And when a check is donated to one of these charities, it's an oversized check with the church's name plastered all over it. And as I recall, I think Jesus said something about giving alms to the poor, something about in secret, so that our right hand doesn't know what our left hand is doing. I think that's how we could do better.
And the other question that I have, Rob, obviously, is why is it the church is not donating itself for these? In fact, what about like matching a donation? A lot of employers match donations in a 401k. Is the church donating? Is the church matching the donations that are coming into the giving machines?
Absolutely not. Now, they say they're covering the expenses of the machines and possibly credit card transactions, but they've got some pretty deep pockets. They could donate.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering about. Why is it that the church is, especially with how much we know that the church is worth. The church is worth just a tremendous amount, easily worth $300 billion with $100 billion in real estate, $200 billion in Ensign Peak. And these machines are donating, are collecting a few tens of millions of dollars per year. The church owns, in Apple stock alone, the church owns $2.7 billion in Amazon stock. They're going to make more on the dividends of Amazon stock than the entire giving machines. This is like a rounding error for the church. This is a very small amount of what the church could do, but they keep coming back to this and giving themselves a huge attaboy with regards to look at what we're doing.
If the purpose is public relations, the church is doing it right. But if the purpose is actual charity, it could be done a lot better.
That does remind me that there are a few more updates. The giving machines have been around for, I think, about 5 to 7 years, as memory serves. They're in more and more cities every single year. And this year, there's a couple of new things, Rob, on the giving machines that you can buy in there that you can select. And we're going to bring that to you as part of what we call the Mormon News Roundup Poll of the Week. And by the way, Rob, don't take these too seriously if you get my drift, but there's some new things in the vending machine. Rob, there's some new things in the vending machines here. And I want you to be the first person to take our poll here. And what would you buy if you were at the vending machine? I'm going to give you the top 10 new things that are in there this year. I want to see what you'd like to buy with your donation. Are you up for it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now we release our episodes live every Sunday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time onto YouTube. If you come on over to YouTube at that time, you can interact with us in the live chat. So here's the top 10 things we're going to see in the giving machines this year. And number one
background check for an LDS leader who will be working with kids.
Yeah, it's only $20, Rob.
It's worth it.
Yeah, I mean, that is well worth the cost. That is definitely something that I would put $20 into, that's for sure, because the church doesn't do that now. Or how about number 2?
One Mary Maid chapel cleaning for my local ward.
Yeah, I don't know how much that would be, but I'm definitely willing to shell out for that instead of cleaning the toilets on Saturdays myself.
Absolutely. I'm with you on that one.
Definitely. And number 3.
1 day of City Creek Mall utilities.
Actually, that could be kind of pricey. That mall's a pretty big mall, but that That's a real testimony builder. When you give the money to the City Creek Mall, knowing that you're going to keep the lights on, that just gives a warm feeling in your heart, doesn't it, Rob?
Yes.
Knowing that all of those people are going to be able to continue shopping at the mall that Jesus built me. I don't know. That's a very special feeling. That's for sure. How about number 4?
Hunting preserve pass for an uber rich Mormon to hunt down defenseless animals in the name of the Lord.
Yeah, now the church owns a number of these hunting preserves that it houses animals on, and then they sell the rights to these wealthy people to come onto these ranches and preserves to hunt down these animals, and they do it as a fundraising thing. But you still have to buy the hunting pass from the government. That's what you're buying here, is the hunting pass for those uber rich Mormons to kill those defenseless animals.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't know about that.
Yeah, that could be a pass. It's not for everybody. I understand that. Number 5.
One subscription for Elder Holland and Eyring to LDSplanet.com.
There's a lot of hot profiles on LDSplanet.com. I don't know if you've been on it, Rob.
No, I'm married. I haven't been on there. No.
Okay, well, at least that you'll admit. But yes, now that they're both single, that's where that's where you could find a lot of these single ladies to be on there on LDS Planet. And it's not a free service, so you could buy it 1 month for them to have that subscription for them. I like it.
And they would like it as well, I'm sure.
Definitely. Or how about number 6?
Well, the Sioux Cody, Wyoming Zoning Board fundraiser.
Yeah, let's sue that zoning board back into the Stone Age. And this, if you buy that, if you select that in the giving machine, it just comes down and you're giving money to the law firm that the church is using to sue Cody, Wyoming into the Stone Age. What do you think?
I don't know about that one.
Okay, I understand. There's lots of different things to buy. You get 10 choices here. It's not for everybody. I understand. How about the Save BYU Accreditation Fund? Because, they've been in so much hot water, especially with regards to the transgender speech pathology, the speech pathology area. Could we save BYU's accreditation with some donations? What do you think?
Well, I'm a BYU alumni. I'd like to see the school stay accredited, so that's important. Seems like they took Elder Holland's muskets and shot themselves in the foot several times, so that might be an important investment.
Yeah, especially the speech and language program was in accreditation limbo for quite some time. Or how about number 8?
Patreon for Mormon News Roundup.
Yeah. Hey, I'm surprised to see that in those machines this year, but I will take anything I can get, Rob.
Okay.
Or how about number 9?
Plastic surgery to lift Elder Holland's jowls.
Oh, boy. That wasn't that important back when he was married to Patricia Holland. It wasn't that big of a deal. But now that he's on the market, I think it'd be very timely.
Yes, and he's kind of taken on quite a grumpy look lately. This could really help.
Yeah, I think a fundraiser there. I'd like to select that. I don't know how much it costs, but it's worth every penny. Or how about number 10?
Tim Ballard tattoo removal.
Yeah, he needs it. He definitely needs it. As we're going to find out, he's in a lot of trouble this week, and maybe it's time to get rid of some of those tattoos. And that does bring us to our, for those of you in the live chat, go ahead and cast your votes in the live chat. This is the top 10 new vending machine options for this year's giving machines. And Rob, will you be the first person to take our poll?
I will vote for number 1, the background checks for priesthood leaders.
Yeah, you can't argue with that for sure. I personally prefer number 4, to give a hunting preserve pass for an uber rich Mormon to hunt down defenseless animals in the name of the Lord. You've heard of lying for the Lord, but there's a special feeling, Rob, that comes for hunting for the Lord. That's when you really...
Like Nephi of old. Fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So for those of you in the live chat, we appreciate that. That does bring us to our next article here. And Rob, what's going on with KSL, the Deseret News, and the church media outlets as far as getting a new leader of Deseret Management Corporation? What's going on here?
Well, Keith McMullen, who used to serve in the presiding bishopric and then had the job of working media for Bonneville, now has been replaced with Jeff Simpson. Jeff was a Disney exec. He worked for Bonneville Communications. He worked for Excel Entertainment Group. And now he's the man in charge.
The most amazing thing about these articles is you never get to see these released in either Deseret News, the Church News, or KSL. When it comes to the for-profit portion of the church, you don't get to hear about anything with regards to the church's media outlets. Why do you suppose that is?
Probably because of the money involved, or the favoritism in people getting these jobs.
Yeah, it's amazing. You're seeing people who are rotating through the presiding bishopric and then becoming part of Deseret Management Corporation. It's kind of the people here at the top who are receiving this gravy train. Once they get on the train, they almost never get off of that train. And, the Deseret Management Corporation, it is an absolutely massive entity. It has so many for-profit. It's a big umbrella company. It's got Deseret Book. It's also got Beneficial Life. Yes, Beneficial Life is still around. Deseret Digital Media, Bonneville International, Hotels and Hospitality, all of the church's for-profit endeavors, the ranches, the farms, the hunting preserves, the hotels, the office space, the Amazon warehouses, the for-profit real estate that the church is involved in Arizona, in England, all throughout the world. This is a huge, huge organization. And at the top of Deseret Management Corporation is the First Presidency. They're the head honchos, but we have a managing director, and that person has changed out. And he's gotten a personal note here from the First Presidency that says, thanks for your service. We appreciate everything that you've done. Any last thoughts on this switch out here?
Jeff was called to be the mission president of the Yakima mission. And then there was a vacancy at BYU Broadcasting. So the First Presidency asked him to take that position. So he turned down the mission president thing. Apparently the Lord can change his mind with some of these inspired callings.
Yeah,
Jeff's going to do a good job because he's been in the media industry, and he calls the industry breathtaking, and it demands that that they be at the forefront. And the church is evolving from not only into a real estate mogul, but also a media mogul.
Yeah, I mean, the church is just making so much money. And see, this is the last part of the church, one of the last parts of the church, I think, that has not been cracked by whistleblowers. We know how much the church has from the Truth and Transparency Foundation, which went out of business, which was founded by Ryan McKnight, started as Mormon Leaks. They're the ones who really uncovered the fact that the church is the number one holder of real estate in the United States. That's the first pin. The second pin was from David Nielsen and others, where we know how much Ensign Peak is worth now. So those are two out of the three. The third part that we don't know is Deseret Management Corporation. How much money are all of these companies bringing in? We can approximate how much tithing is brought in. We know that. We know fast offerings. It's just the church's for-profit endeavors. How much is the church bringing in? Because these are private companies, they're not publicly required to disclose, like through 13Fs or Form 990s or anything else. These are all private companies, which are part of the corporation soul of the church. We don't have any idea how much money is being brought in here. We know how much money the church is worth. We know how much money the tithing is, and we know how much is in Ensign Peak. It's this last part that we really have no idea. We're waiting on a whistleblower out there, and I can guarantee you this: it's probably not going to be Jeff Simpson. We're not going to learn anything from him.
No. Well, I'll be watching, and I look forward to learning.
Yeah, definitely. Now, this next article is a real bombshell. I could not believe this. Unfortunately, this is the craziest thing is that we see Latter-day Saints involved with sexual abuse almost every single week here, and it's absolutely crazy. But this one is especially bad here, Rob. I know you read this article. What's going on here with Mormon leaders being accused of covering up decades-long epidemic of sexual abuse and incest that rivals scandals in the Catholic Church? Victims, they're saying, Rob, that the perpetrators are protected, but the abusers are forced to forgive their attackers. This is absolutely terrible.
This article came out of the UK, so the entire world is becoming aware of the church's reputation for protecting the organization and the perpetrator and forcing victims to think of these things as sins rather than crimes, and just forgiving the perpetrator. We had the case in Arizona, and this article exposes a big case in Oregon.
You have all of these women that were interviewed here by the Daily Mail that say that they have been, mostly women here, have been the subjects of sexual abuse, a pattern of cover-ups for years. All of these women here claim that the church covered up her abuse at the hands of an older boy. These women have said that they've been raped. And as you mentioned, this is the craziest thing that I've seen, is the family that lived here in Wilsonville, Oregon, abused by a trusted doctor. So an esteemed community figure, Farley, Dr. David Farley, who was also in the state council, he was an ecclesiastical leader. He has been accused now of, between 2007 and 2009, of sexually harassing, sexually abusing, sexually assaulting more than 200 women. I have never seen a case this egregious before.
It's horrible. And I feel very passionately about this because as a father, I have had experience with my children and this issue in the church. And to those Latter-day Saints who are parents in Zion listening to this, what I would like to ask you is, if you were in the ward of this man and priesthood authorities were aware of him harming children, would you be advised of it so that you could protect your children? Also, if a member abused your child and confessed it to a priesthood leader, would you be made aware of it? And finally, if there was a case of abuse in your ward, would priesthood authorities report it to law enforcement? If you can't answer yes, absolutely yes, to all of those questions, that's a problem. And I don't think the church is going to learn or move or act until members start voting with their tithing dollars.
Yeah, this is the craziest part about this. Here he is here, Dr. Farley. Now, he had his license revoked by the Oregon Medical Board after a panel of medical professionals found that he had sexually abused minors. This is the Latter-day Saint here who is credibly accused of sexually molesting over 200 people here. And this is the worst part about this story. 3 of Farley's victims have alleged to the Daily Mail that the Mormon Church has refused to excommunicate or even hold a disciplinary hearing for Farley, despite repeated pleas for action. So, it's incredible what the church will excommunicate people for around here. If you have a controversial podcast or you don't sustain a church leader in just the right way, if your tone is just a little bit sour and, you don't have the spirit in your countenance, you're going to get excommunicated. But if you sexually abuse 200 women repeatedly for years, have your license revoked, we don't even hold a disciplinary council.
That's horrible. And just a reminder, D-Base, as Elder Hamilton just taught, we should substitute the Savior or Jesus Christ in place of the church. So really what you're saying there is you don't like the way Jesus is handling these sex abuse cases.
Yeah, no, I don't like the way that Jesus is handling these sex abuse cases, and I hope that doesn't get me excommunicated. This is the thing about it is this is one of his accusers said in this article. I know children in the area that he's living with right now, and he's currently attending church. He's still hanging around children, gaining trust in the community. He moved out of Oregon. He moved, I believe, to Idaho and then Utah so that he could continue practicing medicine. But he's still an upstanding member of the church, not excommunicated, even though he has 200 people who have accused him. This is, I just could not believe this. This is, again, from the article. He's a very dangerous man. We want action from the church, but from this article, they're saying no. No action from the church, where he just used he was a doctor. He was, I believe he was a gynecologist, and he sexually abused a number of women in either obstetrician, in childbearing, or in examinations. He recruited them for puberty studies. He took private photographs of them in compromised situations, but he still gets to be a member of the church. Whereas somebody like Sam Young or somebody like Bill Reel, they're excommunicated right away. There's just the hypocrisy, the double standard here. What is important around here? Is it the tone that people talk about the senior leaders of the church? Is that the most important thing? Or safeguarding children, women and children from serial abusers? What is the most important thing?
I'm with you. And it must be very confusing to the victims. Children who grow up in a church where they are taught that Jesus cares about children, and Jesus suggests a millstone for perpetrators. Very confusing. And one more thing I want to say, if I walked into an LDS sacrament meeting and began slapping people in the face, I don't believe that the bishop would stand up at the pulpit and say, brothers and sisters, forgive Rob for his sin. No, they would treat this as a crime. They would call law enforcement, and I would be escorted out of the building and charges pressed. And yet, when a priesthood holder walks into a bishop's office and confesses something, it's not treated like a crime. It's treated like a sin. That needs to change.
Yeah, and we saw that with the AP sex abuse. That these bishops then will call the church head hotline in Salt Lake City, and the hotline a lot of times that the lawyers on the other end will say, "Well, you don't have to report it if you don't want to," or will explicitly tell the leaders, do not report this abuse. Now, in this particular case with Dr. Farley, the church did report it to law enforcement. So that's a positive step. But then they, according to the allegations, they still kept him on the roll. So they reported him to the police. And see, a lot of times the church will wait until you have a conclusion to the end of a legal outcome. If you're accused of something, they will wait until the process is over before they pass judgment. We don't need to wait to hold a disciplinary council until this has worked its way completely through the court system. That way we can remove people from these situations who are, again, being put in positions where they have access to children, where they have access to vulnerable persons, and where they come into a new ward and nobody knows anything about their previous background. And so they're a priesthood holder. They were a former stake president, or they were a former part of the stake presidency or stake high council. And they're given an implicit level of trust by people to reoffend and do everything all over again.
It's not right.
Yeah, definitely. Now, we post all of our articles here on the Mormon News Roundup. We're on Instagram. We're on TikTok or X. We're on X. We're on TikTok. We're on Instagram. Can you let us know your thoughts on this article? We really want to know. Now, the next one, you found this one, Rob. This is a very interesting one here. Gospel answers to every doubt and faith challenge. Elder Cook tells young adults. So there's another young adult devotional. You know, they're having a lot of these young adult devotionals these days. Apostles, 70s, and their spouses help answer questions from 5 categories of interest to young Latter-day Saints worldwide during the devotional. What were your initial thoughts here about how the gospel can answer every doubt and faith challenge? What do you think, Rob?
Well, I have some questions for Elder Cook because he suggests the old standard formula of read your scriptures, say your prayers, go to church, and eventually you will find answers to your questions and doubts. And I assume that he is an example or a follower of his own advice. And so I'd love to ask Elder Cook, you know, as I think back on my faith transition, Elder Cook, if I follow your advice, will I find answers as to why the Book of Abraham's Egyptian translation is completely wrong? Maybe he's already found the answer. And if so, would he share that with us? Or why did Joseph Smith marry other men's wives when the Doctrine and Covenants, section 132, says that they are to be virgins vowed to no other man? Can I have hope to get answers to these questions if I follow his formula?
Yeah, I mean, that's the question. If it can answer every single gospel question, well, what about Heavenly Mother? Can we get our questions answered about Heavenly Mother? Or how about the Adam God doctrine? Or how about any of these questions? How come he said you can receive answers? Well, what are the answers then? What answers have you received with regards to the questions that you have and the other questions that people have? If he said that the gospel can provide the answer to every single question. Well, there's lots of questions that people have out there. They've been repeatedly asked to general authorities in the CES letter and many other places. Why can't he provide the answers that he's received as an apostle to all of these questions that people have had for so long? We just get the same thing over and over, which says, if you pray and ask God, you will receive the answers. Well, if God is presumably giving everyone the correct answers to the question, right? That stands to reason. Then he has the answers to these questions. Elder Cook, if you have the answers to the questions, please provide the answers to the questions.
Help us, yes. The other aspect of his fireside with the youth was that he tried to quell rumors that young people are leaving the church in significant numbers. And he says that's simply not true. But in fact, things are significantly trending towards increasing. And it's he says it's, quote, a continuous upward trend. Wow. I don't understand that math.
Well, let me play that clip for you. I do have that clip queued up here because that's the most controversial clip where he says that young adults are not leaving the church in significant numbers. That is a very dubious claim. Let me play this TikTok, which kind of compiles some of his sayings for you and get your reaction.
For your information, youth and young adults are not less active or leaving the church in higher numbers than in the past, as has been widely circulated.
Is that so? Either Quentin is not a numbers guy and doesn't understand what's actually going on, which is possible, or he's being extremely manipulative here. Let me show you the rest of the clip and then explain why.
The number of missionaries called to serve has significantly increased. The percentage of church participation for the rising generation shows a continuous upward trend. Moreover, the number of young adults attending Institute has also been increasing.
Let's start with his claim about missionaries. This graph here shows the number of missionaries per year over the last couple of decades. This outlier here was a result of President Monson lowering the mission age requirement. So for a couple of years, you had those who had waited for the previous older age requirement, in addition to those who could suddenly go earlier than expected. Apparently Jeff Holland is not a numbers guy, because this led to him predicting that we would have 100,000 missionaries by the year 2019. Obviously that didn't happen. It just normalized again after a couple of years, although admittedly at slightly higher levels than the previous older age requirements. And now it's going up again. This year is predicted to reach 72,000. So exciting. The apostles are saying the same thing as before. But you see this dip right here? In 2020, something happened that made a bunch of people delay their missions. So now we have those who would have normally been serving now, in addition to those who have delayed their missions until now. So of course it's going up. In a year from now, it's going to start to go down again and normalize. And Apostle Cook is about to be a lot quieter about it at that point. His claim about the number of young adults attending Institute is basically the same thing. Here are the numbers he was referencing. Yeah, it's going up right now. Funny how it was doing exactly the opposite pre-pandemic. That's what's going to happen once things normalize again. But his last claim was the most manipulative. Again, here's what he said.
The percentage of church participation for the rising generation shows a continuous upward trend.
Notice the value that he used, percentage. Question, what does it mean to leave the church? To some, it simply means to stop believing and attending. But to more and more of us, it also means to remove your name, and often that of your entire family, from the records of the church. What does that do to the percentage of church activity when those who are no longer attending are no longer even in the equation? It has a
continuous upward trend.
So if church leaders start to talk more and more about percentages instead of raw values, you can know they are manipulating you. And behind closed doors, they are not nearly as confident as that face they put on behind the pulpit.
I think Ryan's onto something, and we need to watch the church's language very carefully, because if they're speaking about raw numbers, that's one thing. But if they're using percentages, then that's very telling.
Yeah, every time that there's a natural ebb, so we went into the pandemic and now everything went down, so everything is going to be going back up naturally just from the pandemic. Okay, it's not because of something that's happening in the church or more people are liking it or anything like that. These are natural cycles that happen from either announcing changes in missionary age or from pandemics or from anything else that happens out there. And then every time that the numbers go down, we're very, very quiet. Then a couple of years later, when we get 2 or 3 years where it goes back up, things are going up. We never say they're going down. We only say that they're going up, and we never acknowledge the other times.
Nothing in this universe is like that. Everything has cycles, and they won't be honest about it.
Yeah, and he says that the numbers of people attending Institute is going up. Yes, the sheer number of people is probably going up, but that's just because of the nature of the church is getting larger, the 17 million people, 18 million people. What I really want to know is the retention level of a 12-year-old to an 18-year-old. Because if you go back to Mormon leaks, if you go back to those Mormon leaks videos back from 2012 to 2013, during the behind the scenes, we learned that 70 to 80% of young persons who are baptized, when they turn 18, they're no longer active in the church. That's the real number that I want to know, and that's the number that they won't tell us. Well, Elder Cook, you say that the retention is better. Prove it. Tell us what the retention is. Okay, because
show us the numbers.
Show us the numbers. Prove it. Okay, if you're so confident, then let us know what they are, because we have Mormon leaks, which says that they were 70 to 80%. I think it was 70% in the world and then 80% in North America that leave the church. That's not exactly doing very well. And I can almost guarantee you that in the 10 years of intervening time, that the number of children who are leaving the church has increased. Okay, so if it's doing so well, then let us know. You're giving us these whitewash numbers, and it's not giving us the complete picture. What's your last word on this one?
These are words that are designed to calm the fears of the youth, and it's starting to sound more and more desperate, and it's less and less believable.
A lot of young people can see through these numbers and the shell games. And the problem is that we had the church reporting to us, for instance, with how much money it had under management in the SEC, and we found out that the church wasn't telling us the truth on that, flat out. So what else are they not telling us the truth on? If you're telling the truth on this, then be more transparent and be honest. Back in the 1960s, the church used to release in the accounting, in the General Conference in the accounting, there used to be like 50 different things that it reported on, everything from ordinations to temple ordinances to a lot more retention, to all of these different things. The number of people in the Relief Society, over time, the church has peeled back the number of items that they give us annual reports on, and they're just sticking to a couple of things. If things are going so well, then just dispel the common misperception by releasing the numbers. There's no problem, then go ahead and prove it. And as far as finding gospel, last thing, as far as finding gospel answers, if there are answers to these questions that have been persistent, that people have been asking about for years in, years out, that so many people have left the church over, as you mentioned, the Book of Abraham, polygamy, the gospel topics essays do nothing to help answer those questions. If there are real answers to the questions, then let us know what they are, and do so in a question and answer setting where you go to a stake conference and you let people come up and ask you a question. If Elder Cook came to my stake conference and said, I'm going to do a Q&A, ask me anything, I would attend and I would be asking him questions so that I could receive the answers that he says that he has. The reason he does not do that is because he doesn't have the answers to the questions.
I'm afraid you're right. Yep.
Now, our next article here is Tim Ballard. He's back in the news once again, and for all the wrong reasons here. Breaking news, 6 plaintiffs are filing suit against Operation Underground Railroad. They just spoke at a press conference here a couple of days ago here. 5 of them are revealing their names for the first time here. They're credibly accusing Tim Ballard of sexual harassment, sexual assault, sexual improprieties during the supposed Operation Underground rescues. And this is absolutely amazing. The testimony of this was absolutely gripping. These 5 women, they have absolutely nothing to gain by coming out, putting their face out there. They're subjecting themselves to all kinds of scrutiny. There's nothing in it for them. They already had the lawsuit that was out there. It's not like they're gaining notoriety and fame and fortune. They're just going to be the subjects of criticism and, unfortunately, ridicule. But their testimony was incredibly gripping. We don't have time to play all of them, but I found this section here of Kira Lynch. She's speaking out against Tim Ballard. And I just want to play. This is incredibly heartfelt. Get your reaction to it.
I fell into a deep depression. Someone approached me about a lawsuit informing me that they had reported my incident to OUR back in 2021, but nothing was done. In fact, I was told they originally wanted to come after me. They never reached out to me. That made me feel very small. A company that saves women and children from sex trafficking would cover up a horrific incident to save themselves. Now I'm slowly working through everything and gaining an understanding of what happened to me. Constantly reminding myself of my strength and bravery. I'm confident in standing here today to tell you all my truth and knowing my truth. I'm so proud to be here with these women and this man. I'm so proud that I came forward, and I will not allow OUR or Tim Ballard to treat anyone else the way that I was treated. I will not stand by and allow Tim Ballard to hurt anyone else, to abuse anyone else. I will use my voice against those who cover up predatory behavior or sexual assault. I want to be a voice for those who haven't had one and help them understand that they always have a choice and a way out. I want them to know that they are not alone. It's humiliating to share the most mortifying moments of my life publicly, but it had to be done to put a stop to this. To Tim Ballard and OUR. The truth is finally coming to light, and the evil, the pure evil, can no longer.
That's incredibly powerful testimony there. What's your reaction to these the 5 women who have come forward, their allegations? What's your reaction?
I too am proud of them. and they deserve to be congratulated for their courage and welcomed into the club of female heroines in the Latter-day Saint tradition, to include Sarah Pratt and Martha Brotherton, who stood up to delusional men who were trying to take advantage of them.
Yeah, and that's the most amazing thing, is that the Spear Fund, after disgraced so-called child rescuer Tim Ballard disgraced now, after he left OUR, he was put into the Spear Fund. But the Spear Fund, they have started the process of dropping him from their website too. Noted in passing, the Spear Fund has dropped Tim Ballard from the website. It was his last refuge on the planet outside of his own goofy personal channels, but he's being booted out of that as well. I worked in this industry in domestic violence and in sexual assault for a number of years, both part-time and full-time. The bravery that it takes to be able to come forward and to know that you're going to have to share some very, very intimate, very private details that are really none of anybody's business but your own. And to have that fortitude, to know that the light is going to be shined on you and that you're going to try to put a stop to an evil practice, that's incredibly commendable. And don't forget, people say, well, Tim Ballard, he didn't have anything to do with the church. He's just a rogue member. Not so. His books were sold in Deseret Book. His books were sold at the BYU bookstore. He was on the church's website in devotionals. President Ballard, the late President Ballard, trotted him out as somebody who we should be looking up to in official capacities. And President Ballard also called other rich Mormons and told them that they needed to be sending money to Tim Ballard. So now we're finding out that this incredibly horrific person has just been doing the most despicable things. And the church, is the church going to take responsibility for this? Is the church going to own up to this? That's my question.
I doubt it. And I think the younger generation wants you to call a spade a spade. Another thing I found interesting from the women's testimony is they said that in all of their years working at OUR, they did not see any children actually rescued. Where are the rescued, saved children coming forward praising Tim Ballard? They're non-existent.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what you would expect you to say. You would expect people to be coming forward and say, Tim Ballard saved my life. He may have made a few mistakes, but he saved me. Okay, he saved my whole family. We never seen anything like that. All of these people are, Gardy Marty, we know, was a figment of people's imagination, was put out there by so-called psychics who were supposed to be helping Tim Ballard rescue these children. And these children, they didn't even exist in reality. It's bad enough to pretend that you're rescuing children that are being trafficked and do exist. He's taken it to a whole next level, which we're rescuing people who don't even exist. This is an incredibly grifting scam. Law enforcement is finally starting to catch up with Tim Ballard. He's not going to be able to get away with it for long. And it really reminds me of the end of Joseph Smith's life, where all of the machinations, all of the fraud, of the financial fraud, of the sexual improprieties, of the grooming, of the breaking of the laws, of the treasonous behavior, of the counterfeiting, of all the other thing was finally catching up with Joseph Smith. It looks like it's also catching up with Tim Ballard.
I think the best thing he could do is own his behavior. The earlier, the better. Rolling Stones had an article on these same women, and they mentioned that the women said that there was little consideration for the safety of the staff and the volunteers, but the focus instead was on crafting a marketable public image. And I hope the LDS Church does not fall into that same trap.
Well, let me play this TikTok here that talks about that Thanksgiving Day hoedown about Tim Ballard. This seems pretty timely.
On a Thanksgiving Tim Ballard song. Okay. Tim Ballard changed his relationship status on Facebook today. 5 women's testimonies mean his wife didn't want to stay. Summer he was riding out on top of it all. But Thanksgiving we're grateful for Tim Ballard's fall.
Yeah, his Facebook page has been updated, separated, Rob. That's tragic. You'll pardon me if I don't ask for a moment of silence. The funny thing is, Rob, they let anyone write a review of OUR on their Facebook page these days. Yep. And this is what she updated that on. She said, urgent crisis. There's an abusive network of the wealthiest sex traffickers in Utah. Tim Ballard, Matt Osborne, Sean Reyes, Matt Cooper. Please investigate them as soon as you all get back from prison. OUR. So yeah, anyone can write a review. And it looks like some of these uber wealthy Mormons, it looks like they're going to be paying the piper, or they're going to be facing the music here shortly.
Yes. Well, okay. He deserves everything he's getting.
Absolutely. Now, our next article here, Rob, is American Idol's David Archuleta says that his Mormon friends gave him the cold shoulder after he left the church, and in the wake of him coming out as queer. They told him that that he wasn't welcome to be part of their in-group. David Archuleta, he was the famous American Idol singer there. He came in, I believe he was the runner-up, I want to say in 2009. Now he's 32 years old. He's left the church here, but it's kind of shocking what he's saying, that even his closest friends who are members of the church, they basically shunned him after he left. What's going on with this article?
David Archuleta had attended the funeral of George Michael, and it was a meaningful experience. And then he says he attended the funeral of a prominent LDS leader. Now, he doesn't say who that is, but it's very possible it was Elder Ballard.
Sister Ballard. Elder
Sister
Barbara
Ballard. Is that who
Ballard.
it was?
It was Barbara Ballard.
Which makes me wonder, was Elder Ballard the general authority who told him, we just need to get you to find a nice girl? I don't know. I'm speculating. But David explains that at the funeral, he realized that he had spent his life trying to get approval of the Latter-day Saint community and leadership. He just wanted to be accepted and understood. And it was apparent that they had moved on and that they didn't care about him now that he had really come out as LGBTQ.
Yeah, that is the rumor on the street. And that's basically, I want to say it's been confirmed by people who were there, including, I want to say that it was confirmed by Jim Bennett. I don't know if that's for sure. But yes, the rumor is that David Archuleta at the funeral is telling Elder Ballard that he's having difficulty with his church membership because he feels like he's queer. He feels like he's gay. He feels like he doesn't fit in at the time, even though he hadn't come to fully embrace his sexuality. He wasn't out for everyone. And this is yet another troubling part of Elder Ballard's legacy. You see, he didn't say, you need to embrace who you are. No, we just need to find you. The apostle supposedly said, we just need to find you a nice girl. In other words, if you just get married, your gayness is going to go away. And this isn't some advice that was given back in a basement in the 1950s when, people didn't understand the causes of homosexuality, bisexuality like we do today. I'm not excusing that. I'm just saying that this wasn't in 1950. This was in, I believe it was 2011 that we have Elder Ballard giving David Archuleta the advice that if you just find a wife, it's all going to go away. And of course, he had been dating girls for years. And of course, that didn't solve anything. He couldn't find the connection with women that he wanted to have. That was his entire problem. And no, that didn't help. And this, the worst part about this article is even his closest LDS friends, after he left the church, this article says that they shunned him, that they didn't want to have anything else to do with him, and that they left him out in the cold. And that's just real shocking because we were always taught, love the sinner, hate the sin. But you know what? Mm-hmm. It's impossible to separate the two. You can't do that. You have to love people for who they are. And because so often the church teaches us that homosexuality is an abomination, then that means that David Archuleta himself, that's his identity, is an abomination. And he just talks in this article about how difficult it was to try to stay in the church when everyone around him is literally shunning him like Amish shunning.
David Archuleta was the poster boy for the ideal Latter-day Saint man. He literally did everything the church asked him to. A mission, produce music for church events. And when their LGBTQ policies couldn't work for him and wouldn't work for him, they gave him some bad advice, and now he's experiencing shunning. It's the opposite of Jesus, who went after the marginalized and didn't shun.
And that's not only did his closest friends do it as well. When he came out, his ticket sales also went down. It's the same music. It's the same message. It's the same everything. It's not like he changed. But, he would oftentimes tour around, especially in Utah, especially in the West, especially in Mormon-related communities. And once he came out and said, even though he had not left the church at that point, just merely the fact that he said that he is not a cisgender, that he's a part of the LGBTQ community, his ticket sales went down. It's like, what? I don't understand. His music is still the same music. That's what I don't get. Now, a couple last articles here to wrap things up here for you, Robin. This one is very surprising to me. And I saw this that came across my desk here in November. It's in Nebraska here. And this article here, which is from the Flatwater Free Press, said,
Mm-hmm.
who's buying Nebraska after a shopping spree? The Mormon Church now is the top land purchaser in Nebraska, and that was a bit of a surprise to me because in the past 5 years, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has bought twice as much Nebraska land as the second biggest buyer. If they keep it up soon, they'll own more than anyone. So this is what was kind of surprising was a couple of months ago, the church sold a bunch of land in Missouri, which is supposed to be, that's supposed to be Zion,
Right.
and at the same time, the church is buying tons of land in Nebraska, and it's through the church has a number of real estate arms, and this purchase is coming through Farmland Reserve Incorporated. It's probably not an entity that a lot of people are familiar with, but the church uses its shadowy organizations to be purchasing up all this land, and they do it very quietly. This is one of the first articles that I've seen on this year from a Nebraska-based newspaper, and they do all these purchases on the down low, very quietly, under the radar. They're never released onto KSL. They're never released in the church news. And before you know it, the church is becoming the largest landholder in Nebraska. They already have they already have huge ranches and reserves there, and they're purchasing even more. What are your thoughts on the church just becoming this real estate kingpin in, of all places, Nebraska?
Well, Nebraska is near and dear to my heart. I graduated high school there, but as I recall, the Lord didn't say that was the place. In fact, the pioneers trekked right across it to Utah or back to Missouri, because that's the place. And what I don't know that the church is cognizant of is public sentiment as they buy up real estate. In this article, the Nebraskans were not happy with the church pushing up prices like this and being an out-of-state landlord, owner. And as the church builds communities in Arizona that are going to be only for rent, not for purchase, the church is already in a bad place in the public's opinion polls. This isn't going to help their case.
Well, also think about this. Now, we don't know how much of these acres are going to be used for ecclesiastical reasons, but a lot of times when the church is buying properties, some of that property can become exempt from paying property taxes. So it says in this article that the church is buying up 400,000 acres of real estate. Well, are they paying property taxes on all those? Because we know that the church is tax exempt for a lot of its ecclesiastical for its churches, for its temples, even for its mission homes, and for a lot of other things. So you're probably going to be reducing the tax base in Nebraska for all of these acres. 400,000 acres is a lot of acres. So if I'm a Nebraskan and I'm seeing a potentially tax-exempt organization that's going to be driving up the prices of real estate in that area, not paying taxes, I'm not going to be real happy about what I'm seeing. But the average Nebraskan, they're not going to be able to do anything whatsoever about this, are they?
Not at all. And, I remember when the church was involved in Proposition 8, and some of the protesters around the Los Angeles temple, they had posters that said, tax this church. And that really hurt me. But I think as the church continues to behave like this, it's just a matter of time before they reach a tipping point and it becomes a political or activist issue where the public says, no more tax-free status for these for-profit churches.
Yeah, and that's one thing. The church does have a lot of history in Nebraska, specifically in winter quarters when the Saints were driven out of Nauvoo in 1846, 1847. They hold up in winter quarters. So yes, the church has a lot of history in Nebraska. And this is, I want to highlight one last statement from this, and that's the church, through a spokesperson, the Flatwater Free Press asked the church spokesperson about what they're doing in Nebraska. And a lot of times the church won't comment, but they did in this case. And I think it's very interesting, their response here. And they said this, let me get your thoughts on it. It says the church sees its land buys as a force for good and investment in agriculture, quote, to generate long-term value to support the church's religious, charitable, and humanitarian good works, end quote, said a Farmland Reserve spokesperson. So the idea here is that buying up all this land is doing good for the world.
As a teenager growing up in Nebraska, I used to go to the church farm and pick apples and make applesauce. And it was fun. And I'm sure some of those proceeds went to bishop storehouses or other charitable works. So for sure, some of this land investment will result in charity, but it'll be much more of a benefit for the church than for humankind.
Yes, the church generally acts on its own best wishes, on its own. It's very self-interested. It's not as much concerned about its neighbors, about the world as a whole. You know, when you think about Ensign Peak, for instance, Ensign Peak, they said that it is a fire insurance policy, or it is a rainy day policy, but it's not a rainy day policy for the world. It's not a rainy day policy even for the members. It's a rainy day policy for the church headquarters, for the elite people who are near the top, who are, for the people like the Deseret Management Corporation folks who are making the hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's who the church is really looking out for, is the people at the top, not the average, not the average member.
Not all that different from any other corporation out there, right?
The thing about it is that other corporations, they're concerned with their stakeholders, their shareholders, because those shareholders are the ones who they have power, and they can band together and they can influence what's happening in that corporation if they don't like what they're seeing. But since the church has no accountability to its members, the church doesn't even have common consent anymore, as we just saw from President Holland, who was or set apart as the president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles without any common consent, without any vote, without any ability to influence anything. At least Amazon is responsible to its stakeholders. Now, Walmart and some of these other private corporations, the church, in my opinion, acts more like a private corporation rather than a public corporation.
Yes, exactly.
Because those private corporations like Walmart, I know Walmart, I believe it's gone public now. I'm not on the up and up, but a lot of times the private corporations, who do they answer to? They answer to the founding CEOs, the families, the patriarchy, the monarch, the people who founded the companies to begin with. They're the only ones that matter. And in the church, the people who matter most are the people who are in church headquarters, Quorum of the 15, presiding bishopric, and things along those lines. This is Thanksgiving time frame here, Rob, and I do want to take a moment, give a couple of things. President Nelson gave the famous challenge, I believe it was 2 years ago, where he did the hashtag Give Thanks challenge. Now, he didn't do that this time, but I did have a few things in Mormonism that I am thankful for that I wanted to share with you, and I know that you've got a couple as well, so let me give you a couple. So number one, the one thing that I'm thankful for is the first Ensign Peak detective. That's the one who's unnamed. That's not David Nielsen. It's the one who found the IP addresses that were linked back to the church, where all of the shell companies were apparently organized on the same day from the same organization, because that is what cracked open. That's what led to us finding out what was in Ensign Peak. I'm very thankful for that person. We don't know who that person is, but I hope that we find out who that person is. And I want to give that person thanks, because they really opened up the world's eyes to what the church was doing with all that money. I want to thank the second Ensign Peak whistleblower, which is David Nielsen. And I know this might be very controversial, Rob, but I'm thankful for Lars Nielsen as well, even though because he broke his brother's confidence. Now, I know ethically speaking, that's not a great thing to do, because Lars went around his brother's back, and they're estranged now. But Lars is the one who brought the world the information about Ensign Peak, even though David didn't want him to. And without Lars Nielsen, we wouldn't know what we know now today. And I know that's kind of perverse, but I'm thankful to David Nielsen and Lars Nielsen as well.
Right. Brave men.
Now, a couple of other people I'm going to give thanks to, and then I'm going to turn it over to you. I know you've got a couple as well. The two Ensign Peak shell company employees who resigned rather than continue to perpetuate the frauds of signing the fraudulently signed 13F forms. We have those two shell company managers. We don't know who those people are. They've never been named, but they resigned rather than continue to perpetuate the fraud that the church was engaged in with the tithing and with Ensign Peak. And, if they ever come across this particular channel, I want to thank you for your integrity and for your willingness to stand up and do the right thing.
Correct. Couple of other integrity.
Yeah, a couple of other ones. I want to thank the founder of Mormon Leaks, which is Ryan McKnight. We had him on the Mormon News Roundup, by the way. He is an incredible hero, and that's one of my favorite episodes of all time, by the way. In fact, it's got to be one of my top 5 episodes is the episode with Ryan McKnight. Really good episode. I'm thankful for all the work that he did. I'm thankful for the Widow's Mite Report, for all of the information that they've given to us. I want to thank Kate Kelly, D. Michael Quinn, Hans Matson, Tom Phillips. Those are the people in Mormonism that I want to thank for giving us for the further light knowledge that the Father was supposed to send to us, who gave us the information that we were seeking about the second anointing, about the women's place in the church, about sexual abuse within the church, about the church's real estate, about the church's shady dealings in Ensign Peak. All of those people, I want to thank them. So I'm giving hashtag to give thanks to them.
Yeah, these are people who sacrificed their reputation, their careers, and they made the church a little bit better. So I am thankful for Mormon Larry H. Miller, who funded the Joseph Smith Papers Project. that had a huge change in my life and my understanding of seeing things as they really are. I'd also like to thank the anonymous individuals who wrote the gospel topic essays. I wish I knew who they were so I could thank them personally, but thank you.
Semi-anonymous. We kind of know who some of them are.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I would like to thank the church for its ever-changing doctrines and changing covenants. It gives me hope that the church can become healthier. I'm thankful that in India, there is a giant golden statue of Joseph Smith, which Elder Christofferson endorsed personally, so we can go and properly worship the prophet. That's a little tongue-in-cheek there. And finally, I'd like to thank whoever invented the Wayback Machine so that we can restore the internet from the past and see what the church used to say, which they are now hiding and have now deleted from their website.
Absolutely. Those are some good things to give thanks to. We're on Facebook as well with the Mormon News Roundup. If you come over to Facebook, drop us a like, drop us a thumbs up, and let us know what you want to give thanks for with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, because there's a lot more that I could be thankful for, but we don't have enough time to get into it. Now, we do have 2 last articles to get through here, and then we're going to get you out of here. So, as you know, Rob, there's, this is from Mormon land. The apostle vacancy has spurred some questions about men who run the church for life. The system for picking leaders in this hierarchy has been regularized, but the advancing ages have some asking whether it's time for more changes. What are your thoughts about the latest shakeup in the Quorum of the 15, Rob?
Well, I think we know what's going to happen, but it does give the church an opportunity to reconsider its way of picking leaders and its policy of not allowing leaders to the top 15 leaders to go on emeritus status, such as we saw the Pope step down and things like this. I believe that the method that they currently utilize will ensure that we always have a gerontocracy, and that the good ship Zion will turn very slowly and usually be about 3 decades behind the world.
Yeah, it is. It'd be nice to see emeritus status for the general authorities. There's no reason, as we covered last week, for President Holland, who was just put in as the acting president of the Quorum of the 12. He literally said at Elder Ballard's funeral that in the last 5 weeks, he had been hospitalized for 5 weeks, 3 of which were he was in a coma. How are you going to help lead this multi-billion, this hundreds of billions of dollar organization when you're 90, 95 years old and you've been in a coma for 3 weeks? How are you supposed to receive revelation from divine sources when you can barely stay when you're in a coma? It just makes no sense to have these individuals stay in power. The only thing that makes sense for them is that they've waited their entire lives to have these powerful moments, and they're not about to give them up.
No, that's exactly right. And, concerning the option of having an emeritus status, it appears that historically, the God of Mormonism would prefer to kill his leaders off to make sure that they arrive at the president in the right order, and that if they do lead the church astray, he can take them out.
Yeah, that'd be nice if it was done in a timely manner, but it just seems to be incredibly ad hoc.
The other thing that the article mentioned about church callings is that historically, amongst women, Joseph Smith allowed the sisters to choose their own Relief Society president, and there were no term limits. These women served for life as well. Why are women being treated so differently? Why can't they pick their own president? And why are they limited to 5-year terms?
Yeah, I mean, the Relief Society presidents used to be long-serving, and it was, I think, back in about the 1990s that the 5-year term limit started getting put on the Relief Society presidencies. And that was from the Mormon Land podcast with Dr. Bowman. He talked about the history of that and the fact that most likely his reasoning behind why women don't serve for long periods of time in the church now is to diminish their influence and diminish their power. If you have a rotating cast at the top of the Young Women's and the primary and the Relief Society, if they're always rotating, if they only have a 5-year term limit, you don't get to know them, and their influence then is diminished.
I think he nailed it.
Yeah. And speaking of women, this is our last article here. Speaking of women in the church, seems to be very, very present these days here. And this is the article here from Peggy Fletcher Stack, which I think is the most viral article of the week, by the way. And she says this: there's been a slap in the face to LDS Women. LDS Relief Society leaders were ordered off the stand in California because an area president has put an end to this Bay Area tradition, and many women are asking why. So for a number of years, at least 10 years, having Relief Society leaders sitting on the stand at the same time as the men was common practice in the San Francisco Bay Area for quite some time. But now this practice has been abruptly discontinued last month. And this is according to church spokesperson Doug Anderson, because the North American West Area president, who has jurisdiction in California, says, no, women, you can't be up on the stands along with your husbands. You have to be sitting down in the pews.
Well, this article really shocked me because who knew there were still members of the church in the Bay Area? I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But seriously, this is just such an obvious power play to put women back in their place. Sisters, get back on your pedestal and get off our stand. It's an ugly move because they had a perfect opportunity to be like Joseph Smith, who was innovative, to be like Jesus, who was a champion of women. And instead, they just retrenched.
Yeah, it seems like we're always in the retrenchment. And Peggy Fletcher Stack posted this out on TikTok, or excuse me, on X as well. And let me show you the tweet that she sent out. She said, here's what's happening with Latter-day Saint women in the Bay Area. An edict by an area authority can undo a decade of successful symbol of gender equality. No more Relief Society presidents on the stand. And Jacob Hansen, who, he runs the Thoughtful Faith X account there, very polarizing figure out there. He said, well, Peggy, she's just an anti-Mormon feminist weirdo who's trying to make a career out of obsessing over every microaggression. Is this about equality or is this about microaggressions?
I think this was a major slap in the face to the sisters and a major step backwards. Imagine being a young woman who's a Latter-day Saint. Everywhere you go, you see equality, opportunity, and inclusion, whether that's at school, at work, if you join the military, if you're playing sports, etc., except when you go to church. And that's when you see the disparity between men and women's influence and authority. I don't know how much longer they're going to stand it.
Yeah, and that's why I saw this tweet here by Maggie Gledhill, which basically goes to what you were talking about. It's that humans, we learn from modeling behavior from birth. So when women and their children in religious congregations look to the stand and only see men, they are conditioned not to value women's voices and views. If men have any decency, they will let women lead equally. And, the joke meme going around is that this is Elder Eyring and Elder Uchtdorf personally telling all of these women to get off the stand. That's what they're really telling them. You don't belong up here with those of us with the Y chromosome.
It really smells of fear, of people who are afraid of losing any power or authority that they have. And it's such a missed opportunity. It really breaks my heart. Just give the women this crumb. It's just a crumb. Let them have it.
Here's another couple of memes and reactions to go along with this. It's a call about the priorities. So here on the top of this meme, we have Mormon Church when women are victims of abuse or rape from leadership. We saw that earlier in the article. If 200 women are being abused and raped, then the church doesn't even hold an excommunication. But if Mormon church leaders learns that women on the stand, that's when we're really upset about it. That's when we make sure that we have an edict. That's when the area presidency gets involved. The priorities here are rather askew.
You can see where the brethren are investing their energy, and it just seems not only wasteful, but hurtful. I mean, why not spend your energy focusing on something like the fact that there's a book out there called Visions of Glory, which is causing a lot of extreme members to do a lot of extreme and dangerous things. But no comment on that. But for a woman sitting on the stand, that demands action.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing it, and we covered this before with Spring Thibodeau and Lori Vallow and other doomsday preppers. The church is not issuing anything from church headquarters denouncing any of these individuals, which are leading to people being kidnapped, people being abused, people being neglected, and just an apocalyptic mindset that is going to get a lot of people killed. The church is completely silent on that. But if women are sitting in a slightly different, instead of sitting in the pew, then they're sitting up on the stand, that's when we need to get involved. That seems like a really bad idea.
Jesus was a champion of women, not only with his words, but with his actions. And with the church, we get a lot of words, but their behavior, their actions don't match their words.
got a couple of other memes that go along with this. Don't want to end on too much of a downer, but let me give you a couple of somewhat amusing memes that go along with this. Maybe I can get you to read this. This is Star Trek. Can you read that?
Fine. I'll leave the stand, but from now on, you can bake your own goddamn funeral potatoes.
Yeah. Okay. There's meme number 1 for you. Yeah. Okay. How about meme number 2?
What do you mean we can't be on the bridge anymore? You realize we do 95% of the work, right?
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, we're kicking off the people who do the most amount of work. 2 more memes here for you. How about this one?
What's the big deal? You still get to pass out towels.
Right. That's from being in the temple. They updated the girls in the temple could pass out the towels in the baptisms for the dead. You're familiar with that update, right? That happened a couple of years ago. Yeah, so what is the big deal? You can still hand out the towels. And here is the final one here, memes here, Rob. If anyone could appreciate a good meme, I hope it's you.
They'll put us on a pedestal, but they won't put us on the stand.
That's the best meme, in my opinion. They'll put women on a pedestal. We value you. We love you. We treasure you. We honor you. You just can't be up here where any power is. You need to be down there among the masses. And that's rubbing a lot of people's really going viral because this is just it seems so petty. It's such a small thing. It doesn't involve any ordinances. It doesn't involve any hierarchy. It doesn't need a revelation. It doesn't even involve church structure. In fact, there's nothing in the handbook that even prohibits that from happening to begin with. It was perfectly acceptable. According to the handbook, is over 500 pages long, and it covers the minutia of everything, including what kind of prayers you're supposed to give, when you're supposed to give them, how you're supposed to address the prayers, who's supposed to attend. It covers everything. This isn't in there. So if it's not in there, why are we making such an issue out of something that has become a treasured tradition for women in these communities? Why are we just getting rid of it, especially with the church having such a bad look with women in the 21st century? It's just the PR. It's just like, if I could just work for church PR and go through these things and help these guys, it's frustrating.
Being a Latter-day Saint woman must be one of the most difficult things to be. They have all my respect. Must be hard.
Yeah, it is. Now, if you could leave us a 5-star review, we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Amazon, we're on Spotify as well. If you could leave us a comment, leave us a 5-star review, be very grateful for that. Now, Rob, what are you working on your TikTok channel, and what can we expect to see from you in the future?
Actually, I've put out 100 TikTok videos or so, and then I tried to tell my personal story, being very vulnerable and honest. And now I really want to focus on constructing. I've deconstructed, and now it's time to construct a new life of peace and harmony, find new community, and support others who are going through the grief process or the faith transition on TikTok or other platforms. And I also kind of want to take my life back. The church got a lot of my time and money, and I'm ready to rebuild and start again.
Well, we'll be watching your TikTok channel. We really appreciate you coming on to the Mormon News Roundup. We have these episodes are live every Sunday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can interact with your humble host in the live chat. We also have new episodes of the Mormon movie reviews, which are live every Monday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Our next episode of the Mormon movie reviews is The First Vision. This is the 1976 classic with Stuart Peterson. It's not to be missed. And I want to give a shout out to Weird Alma for this episode's music on bandcamp.com. And Rob, thanks so much for ruminating with me on the great and spacious beehive. And remember,
no unhallowed hand can stop this podcast from progressing.
So long.
When it comes to nicknames of the church, such as LDS Church, the Mormon Church, to remove the Lord's name from the Lord's church is a major victory for Satan.
Satan.